Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We have a lot to touch on last night's football game. It was a very controversial one. But before we get into everything that happened with the referees, I do want to analyze this game. I think that because we've overshadowed what actually happened in the game so much by the referees actually dropping the ball in this one, the NFL dropping the ball, we might lose sight of how great of a football game this actually was. Now, the Dallas Cowboys defeated the Detroit Lions 20-19. The Detroit Lions' potential go-ahead drive gets wiped out on the two-point conversion, which was called back for a controversial penalty on the Detroit Lions. Now, adding to this, before we get into all of the stats for the game, Brad Allen's referee crew is expected to be downgraded and out for the 2024 NFL playoffs. We knew this was coming. Repercussions had to be called. Reprimandments had to be made in a situation like this where I think you don't want to lose sight of the authenticity within the NFL. People watch the NFL because they think it's real. And it's a situation where it's not like the NFL, not like the NBA where you have a 7-game series. In the NFL, anything can happen. It's one game. Who comes to show up and who's going to make the plays in this given game? We look at playoff football. That's why people love the playoffs. One game, we see the Cinderella stories. If you can win one game, that's why people love the NCAA tournament, because it's one game. If you have the perfect game plan and you come out there and execute, you can win. So I think you want to keep that feeling of authenticity. That's why something like this happened. People are already saying it's scripted, it's rigged. This doesn't help your case when you have a situation where the referees determine the outcome in such a big-time game like this. Now, getting into some of the stats, though, I think for the Dallas Cowboys, they actually did play a good game, even though some of the things we're going to talk about later in the game. Dak Prescott, 26 of 38, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. CeeDee Lamb, 13 receptions, 227 yards, and a touchdown. On the flip side, Jared Goff, 19 of 34, 271 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. The running back tandem of Gibbs plus Montgomery, 29 carries, 108 yards, could have been a lot more. We're going to talk about that. St. Brown plus Laporta plus J-Mo, 243 receiving yards combined for those guys. Now, talking about some of my biggest takeaways from the Dallas Cowboys offensively, I think it starts and it ends with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Now, I want to talk about Dak Prescott first. When I've made the case for Dak Prescott as the MVP, this is the Dak Prescott that I was watching. That's the Dak Prescott we saw last night. And I think outside of the interception on the right side of the football field where he came late against zone coverage versus Iffy Melifonwu, great interception by Melifonwu. But I think just coming back across the field with the football late, you're going to get picked off in some of those situations. Outside of that, though, I mean, even on his misses or incompletions, should I say, had Jake Ferguson up the seam 2 times. And I believe it was either Tracy Walker or Kirby Joseph. Man coverage, got safeties over the top. They're coming in the middle of the field, making plays on the football. Great plays by the defensive backs. But you're looking at that and saying, pinpoint accuracy by Dak Prescott. Now, he missed the shot down there in the end zone. The Brandon Cooks overshot him on that one. Missed CeeDee Lamb across the middle of the field, was behind him on his back hip a little bit. But I could really count on my hand just how many throws Dak Prescott missed in this game. So an exceptional game, and they needed every single throw, every single yard, and the touchdown. Because when we're looking at a game like this, Tony Pollard has 16 carries for 49 yards, and the running game hasn't been what we thought it would be this season, because you move off of Ezekiel Elliott, you now bring Tony Pollard into this featured back position, and I understand the injury, but now we're in week 17. I think in a situation like this, and sometimes we have it where even that first year move, now next year that may be the bounce back year for Tony Pollard. He's not having a terrible season, but I don't think they can run the football and out physical opponents in a situation where it's all game like they did in those past years with Ezekiel Elliott. They can run the ball, but it's not going to be 100 yards consistently. It's not going to be 150, 170 yards from this rushing attack. Now, getting into CeeDee Lamb, he continues to make his mark as a true number 1 alpha receiver. This is something I've been lobbying for even since last season, but I think this season we're seeing it a little differently because it's a higher volume, it's with more consistency. And last year, I wouldn't say he lined up exclusively in the slot, but I think it was a lot more than what we're seeing this season. We're seeing various alignments. I think we respect those guys a little more, like Justin Jefferson, like A.J. Brown, like Tyreek Hill, who also has a lot of various alignments, but when they line up outside the numbers and they go get it on those outside number 1 and number 2 corners, that's more respected than what we see if you're lined up against the number 3 or number 4 corner, or you're facing zone bracket coverages from the inside. But to see CeeDee Lamb, he made big time plays on the outside in this game. He made big time plays from the slot. He caught a couple of jet sweeps. Just to see him doing all of these things at an extremely high level. On the season, he has 122 receptions, 1,671 receiving yards. This surpasses him past Michael Irvin for the Cowboys single season receptions and single season receiving yards records. So to have that, his name is cemented forever in Dallas Cowboys history. Number 88 in the receiving corps. A lot of great receivers that came out of Dallas, but he's another one, and he had the best. He's having the best single season for a receiver ever for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that's huge to have. Now, really talking about the defense for the Detroit Lions, especially in the first half, I think it was a bend but don't break defense. Looking at some of the things outside of the Derek Barnes really mental lapse where he whiffed on a sack versus Dak Prescott, this was probably one of the better defensive performances I saw from the Detroit Lions all season, especially in that first half. And it was stifling because on the first drive, the Detroit Lions went field goal. They had a big-time completion of Amon St. Brown. They had some David Montgomery carries. They followed that up. They went punt, interception, downs on a fake punt with Dan Campbell. We're going to talk about that drive a little bit. But I think when you have the Dallas Cowboys, their 2 longest drives outside of that touchdown pass for CeeDee Lamb, they went interception and fumble. They had the interception with Iffy Melifonwu. We talked about that for Dak Prescott. They had the fumble where they actually had a long drive down the football field. CeeDee Lamb catches the football, tries to extend. Kendall Vildor, another guy who we've seen stepping into the lineup, he made a big-time play, forced the fumble and the touchback. They come off of that drive. They don't score off of the interception from Iffy, and they don't score off of the fumble forced by Kendall Vildor. So I think that's deflating for a defense. And then also you add to that, now we go downs in a situation. We got an extremely great play called up from Ben Johnson. This is a fake punt, and our special teams coordinator knew when to call it. Dan Campbell wanting to go for it on your own territory. They were inside their own 30, and they went for it on 4th down. That's crazy within itself. But to have that, especially in a situation where you're on the road, you're going against the Dallas Cowboys who are stifling at home, I think if you're ever going to do it, if you're ever going to call it a play, that was their environment and the moment to do it, and they executed. Jalen Reeves-Maybin hit Khalil Dorsey down the football field, but you don't score off of a drive like that because you get down the football field, you continue to drive it, get in the red zone, and then you go downs. It was a situation where I think, because at the time it was 7-3, Dallas Cowboys were leading. If you make it 6-7, you're still taking away some of the energy from the Dallas Cowboys, because we're looking at it. We could have made this game 14-3. We get a fumble. It's a touchback. Now we get a 4th down converted on us from a fake punt by Dan Campbell and others. And then they go down. Even though they don't score, they still put points on the board when it could have been a different type of football game. Dallas could have blew the doors off of it. So to not get anything out of that, 0 points out of that sequence, is very deflating for the defense. And I'm looking at that where they still stepped up. Now coming into the second half, I thought the offense caught on a little bit. And the biggest thing that we saw was they were able to effectively run the football. But I think when we have that zone-heavy scheme, we got to put a man on a man, allow our back to read out the gaps and understand where he wants to go with the football. I talked about this in my film breakdown preview. They allowed Osa Odighizuwa, DeMarcus Lawrence, and I said when they've had success in the run game, I promise you, I say all of these things, when they have success in the run game, they're winning those one-on-ones. They're penetrating in the backfield. Osa, Chauncey Golson, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons. How many times do we see Micah Parsons making a tackle for loss? How many times do we see Dante Fowler, Sam Wood? How many times do we see those guys making tackles for losses in the backfield? And even in a game where you gave up 1 sack, you're still getting negative yards in the run game. That's something you never want to have. Those tackles for losses where we're letting gaps leak through, letting guys make those big-time plays, have to clean that up. And I know It's something that Ben Johnson stressed. It's something that the offensive line coach has stressed. When you go against an undersized front, they are super athletic, and they're going to try to cross your face, slant, and move the defensive line to gain those advantages and leverage. But going a little bit further into the offense, I think you look at it in the first half where they have the interception, just talking about situations where the offense has to capitalize on what the defense is putting on their platter. You have the double screen to David Montgomery, and I kind of saw it the whole way. Even watching the game live, I was like, okay, David Montgomery is in the football game. Jahmyr Gibbs is lined up in the pistol single back, so I know it's not going to be something that's really out of the ordinary. If we're jet sweeping David Montgomery, we don't hand him off the jet sweep, it's probably going to be something, either a screen or we're going to come back across to Jahmyr Gibbs. It was a double screen, but you see it with Jordan Lewis. It was one of those film plays. How many times have you watched film? How many times have you seen, okay, if we got Gibbs and Montgomery in the game, that's kind of a tell that's telling us something's coming with one of those two guys. So to have that come underneath that, pick that off. And then in the second half, you have the interception, really a crucial one, in a situation where they tried to make a big time drive. At the time, it was 13-17. This is before the Dallas Cowboys went and got the field goal, where Donovan Wilson got the pick on Sam Laporta's pass. We have to get that one more outside to the numbers, to the sideline. Even with Jared Goff, I think on the 2-point conversion, not the first one we threw it to Taylor Decker, on that second one we tried to get it to James Mitchell. Those are the types of throws we must have those throws in a situation like that. We have to lead our receiver outside and get the football there. But big time interceptions by both. I think we saw a better offensive output from Detroit in that second half. They came out, got the big time touchdown drive, 13 plays, 74 yards, like I talked about. And then they also got the field goal where they came down, got the big time Jamison Williams completion. Happy to see him get a big time completion. But those were situations where when they got something, the Dallas Cowboys came back and they went and got something. After they got that touchdown, Dallas Cowboys went field goal. Detroit Lions got the ball back. They went field goal. Dallas Cowboys, they get it back. They go 9 plays, 75 yards. Brandon Cooks touchdown. Brandon Cooks also had that pass on the right sideline. Great pass from Dak Prescott. Great catch from Brandon Cooks. But I'm looking at those types of things within the football game. And I mean, it's one of those situations where if we're going to talk about it like this, if we're going to look at it like this, now we get into the final end of the football game. Because if you're the Dallas Cowboys and you're leading 20-13, this is a situation where we're looking at that. We have to run down the clock as much as we possibly can. And to see passes in situations like that, where you could have ran the football, forced the timeouts for the Detroit Lions, that was poor clock management. And I think that also gets overshadowed by everything that happened in this game. But going to it, I mean, you have the tripping call, which is called on Peyton Hendershot, could have been called on Aiden Hudson. Now we're getting into talking about some of the things with the refs. And then you also have the play where the Detroit Lions get the football back. They try to make the drive actually go down and score, where it's 13-20. Pass interference on Amon-Ra St. Brown. How do we not call that in a situation like that? We see the hands. We see a corner getting there early. That's a situation where it's a must-have call. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was furious and deservedly so, because how do we, in the fourth quarter, with everything on the line, how do we not see that if we're NFL referees? Now, getting into the final play call, and this is something we got to talk about. Now, I got a question, because I'm looking at what Brad Allen had to say, and we're going to talk about this quote. When asked why was there a penalty called on a 2-point conversion for an illegal touch, Brad Allen answered, so we had a situation where if we're going to have an ineligible number occupy an eligible position, you have to report that to the referee. On this particular play, number 70, that's Dan Skipper, who had reported during the game a couple of times because he comes in on tackle over, on unbalanced formations. He reported to me as eligible. Now, I'm not seeing that when I saw what actually happened in the game, because I saw Taylor Decker talking to Brad Allen, then I saw Dan Skipper running there late, and looked like he didn't even report anything. It looked like he didn't even exchange words with the referee. Now, further, he said, so he didn't have to report at all because Dan Skipper lined up at the tackle position. Number 68, who ended up going downfield and touching the pass, did not report. Now, we've seen the video. We've heard all of the dialogue. Number 68, from everything, all of the knowledge we have gathered, did report. That's Taylor Decker, the left tackle, starting left tackle. Therefore, referring to Taylor Decker, he is ineligible touching a pass that goes beyond the line, which makes it a foul. So the issue is number 70 did report, number 68 did not. And when I talk about authenticity within the NFL, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This was as blatant as it could get. And everyone's saying that Taylor Decker actually did report. All of the guys, Dan Campbell, teammates, seeing the conversation. Jared Goff, we actually saw the verbiage where he sends his guy into the line with the referee. And then we see Dan Skipper, number 70, coming in the huddle late, getting into that situation. I just don't see, I don't see how Taylor Decker didn't report. And it sucks to talk about this with the NFL because it was such a good game. Even if the Detroit Lions didn't get the 2-point conversion, you still would have liked to see a game which wasn't determined by a call like that. And to say they did, where the Detroit Lions had a lot to actually play for. The Dallas Cowboys are locked into that 5th seed for the most part, unless the Philadelphia Eagles lose some football games. But for the Detroit Lions, they were trying to vie and make a run for that 2 seed. Now, all of that is lost in a situation where you did what you were supposed to do. You did everything in that final drive to win the football game, and it just gets taken away from you for what? At what cost? Poor officiating, NFL referees missing calls. It sucks. And I mean, to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, when I say sometimes if one call determines the outcome of the game, sometimes you didn't play good enough. If one call can determine the exact outcome of a game, sometimes you didn't play good enough to win the game. But in this situation, I mean, you get a game-winning drive. How could you say that the Detroit Lions didn't play good enough to win this one when they did everything they were supposed to do legally? Ben Johnson stressing this throughout the week. And I don't think they haven't ran this play too many times. So this was something that they said, if we're on the road, if we ever get in a situation where we need something to win the game on the road versus Dallas, because we want this game, we need this game kind of, this is the play call we're going to go to. And to have it taken away in a situation like that, I can feel the frustration from Dan Campbell. I can feel the frustration from the Detroit Lions fans. And I think even in the press conference, we saw Dan Campbell get a bit frustrated, but also showcasing humility, showcasing the type of person he is, that he's not going to let the NFL referees just throw him off of everything. He's not going to hold a gripe. This isn't going to go further than it needs to go. Now, of course, there needs to be repercussions, and I think we saw the repercussions. Brad Allen and his officiating crew will not officiate in the 2024 NFL playoffs, but this is something we should have never talked about. When I talked about everything I did in this game, as great of a game as it was, to have this happen is frustrating. Now, I want to know what you guys think down below in the comments. What do you think about the game? What do you think about the referees? The NFL dropped the ball. And I don't really say that. We've been on this channel, and I've never really gotten into the referees. I talked a little bit about the Kadarius Toney situation because I was frustrated with how the Kansas City Chiefs have played this season. Lack of attention to detail, but this is something a little different. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. We'll be back with more game analysis coming out of NFL Week 17. That's going to do it for today, and now